Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 56th Chicago International Film Festival. My name is Sam Flancher. I'm the short film programmer at this year's festival. We're very excited to welcome these wonderful animators from the Shorts 2 animation program. So we've got Alexandra Ramirez, the director of Ty, Friedrich Schuld, director of The Chimney Swift, and Renee Zahn, director of Oh Black Hole. So welcome, everybody, this morning. Or evening, I guess, where everyone else is, but morning for me, kind of, 11. I want to start just by asking, could we kind of go around and have everyone just say a bit about the film, kind of introduce the film to people watching? Alexandra, why don't we start with you?
To introduce the film, okay. So my film is an animation film that the subject can be quite open, but in fact, what moves me to make this film, it was the idea of adaptation, how far we can go to adapt to the other, and how hard we should keep our ideas in mind. So for that, I create a visual metaphor that makes the film as it is. It's a black and white film, hand drawn, and have a look, and that's it.
And Friedrich, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I have also an animated film. It's a hand-drawn animation, very simple style, I would say, done with a little team, and it's about a phenomenon. I would say when you Google climbing boys, you can see it already in Google. It's like you see very old pictures, black and white pictures of children being forced to clean chimneys, which I knew nothing about really much, except for the romantic stuff you can have in Mary Poppins or something. But yeah, it was really interesting to me to read about this. And my film is about, it's based actually on original statements that those chimney sweeper persons did. And I based the story on those interviews. Yeah, very old interviews.
Great. And Renee, why don't you go next?
So Oh Black Hole is a 2D hand-drawn and 3D stop-motion hybrid musical film about a woman who turns into a black hole because she's afraid of the passing of time and things leaving her, so she sucks in the entire universe into her embrace. And about a young girl called Singularity who goes on this quest to escape the black hole.
Cool. And I want to ask everyone about, you all kind of touched on it a little bit, but about kind of the initial idea or inspiration for each of your films. Like, what were the sort of beginning thoughts? Maybe Friedrich, you could start. You mentioned you had this material. How did you come across this archive material and these letters, and what sort of prompted you to make a film about it?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so much material about it, and it's so old, and so actually it's very boring when you look at the documents first. But there was one woman who has written a book, which is also called Climbing Boys, and mostly focused on England's backstory. And I found this book to be very interesting. It has a lot of facts, but then those interviews really catched me. I don't know how those interviews got actually into that book. I guess it's based on some protocols from the 19th century where somebody asked those persons, those master sweepers. Yeah, and I think I had this idea. The initial idea was, that's also why there's a bird in this movie, because there's actually a bird that's called the Chimney Swift, and a bird that lives in chimneys, and is attached to the wall from the inside, and likes those places because they are so warm. And so I think I wanted to combine those two elements and see what comes out of it.
Great. And Alexandra, why don't you talk about sort of, you mentioned the idea of adaptation being kind of the initial inspiration, but can you talk about like your journey, kind of trying to visualize that?
Yes, actually, it's like like if I glue everything that was in my mind on that time, and adaptation was one of the things. But if we talk about images or texts or things that I was reading at the time, for example, there was a book that I was reading that describes a type of characters that it was like small people that live in a small island, but they were really really big, and they have a really tiny head, and they cover the tiny heads with masks. They in the description of these characters, they were described as really dummy people. So they might be really strong because they had a huge body, but when they have a war or a fight, they didn't had intelligence to understand that they lose the fight because they were really dummy, but they hide anyway. So these characters were funny. I like in one side, but I didn't like in the other side. For example, the idea of having a small head, it means that you are dumb, and you need to hide your handicaps. So I thought, let me try to create a character that I enjoy more, which can be bizarre and which can be morbid and all that stuff. But let me try to play with this character in my own way. And then I saw some drawings of I don't know how can translate, but I think in English it's called art outsider. You know, the that kind
Yeah.
of drawings that
Yeah, outsider art, like non-professional artists working.
yeah, and something that I really enjoy when I was watching some of those drawings on Google. It was a shame because I didn't save them, so I don't have the drawings anymore. I was just on the Google, and I realized that when you have a piece of paper, those drawings usually people don't deal really in a normal way with the edges. You know, for example, I'm starting to draw a body. The body is really big, and suddenly I just have this space for the head, and so I draw a really tiny head, or or to make it fit on the piece of paper. And some of those that drawings inspired me to create characters with some kind of handicaps that help me to explore this subject. And technically, I worked a lot. I used to work a lot with printmaking techniques. This is not printmaking at all, but actually, I try to do with normal drawing, like normal pencils. I try to draw with light instead of drawing the shadows. For example, the light is white, and so I need to think in the opposite way. So those were the triggers for for the film itself, and that's it. Yeah.
And Renee, how about you? Can you talk about sort of the beginnings? Your film is so full of ideas, metaphor, and a song. Can you talk about the starting early days?
Oh yeah, so the film came from this drawing that I was doing of a woman with a dark mass where her head should be, like just a smudge instead of a face. And then from there, I sort of started trying to figure out what her story was and why I was drawing this image. It was really something that was like stuck in my head. And I think in my films, I tend to try to make films about things that I'm scared of as a way to like confront the fear. And I think like something that was on my mind at the time, and which I think is a pretty universal fear, is this idea of change and things leaving and ending. So yeah, the film is about how you shouldn't hold on to things, it's change is good and transience is beautiful. And so I guess I was trying to convince myself as much as anybody by making this film with this message. I don't know if it really, worked. I'm still pretty afraid of change. But yeah, it was good to get it out there. And the music, I don't know, I'd always wanted to make a musical. The last film I made was sort of told through rhyming couplets, so a musical seemed like the next step. And it's kind of cat.
Yeah, can we see the cat?
Let's see the cat.
But yeah, I was working. Oh, what's her name?
Chinelo, which means flip flop. Well, he's shy, but he wants attention, so he thanks you. Sorry.
Anyways, I'm sorry, Renee. Can you were talking about the rhyming couplets in your previous film?
Yeah. So I guess the next step felt like song seemed natural, and I worked with a great composer called Harry Brokenshaw, and we were really inspired by the music of people like Bjork and Anthony and the Johnsons, who tell stories through lyrics. One thing I realized making this film is it's very hard to tell a story through lyrics because people just don't I think it's harder to have to get people to pay attention to the lyrics rather than just experiencing them. So that was something that we had to sort of work through. But yeah, it was a quite a journey making the film. It was my first stop motion endeavor, so that came with a much bigger team of like 50 people, and I'm used to making films alone in my bedroom, so it was a big change, but a fun challenge.
Yeah, I think the musical aspect of the film is it almost feels like naturally or kind of like almost accidentally a musical. The songs just kind of spill out of the character, which I think is like extremely appealing. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I sort of really love musicals that shouldn't be musicals, like Dancer in the Dark, or just really musicals that are really dark or feel like you said, like accidents.
Yeah. And so I do, this is a question we always get at the festival from audience members, so I feel like I can be a conduit for the audience right now. I want to ask about the specific style and process of animating, because I think it's often, to those of us who are not animators, this kind of mystery box of like, how do you do it? How do you make it look like that? Could you, we can start with Friedrich. Can you talk about like kind of the technical process behind animating Chimney Swift?
Yeah. It's like a 2D pencil style, but it's also done on the computer partly. So there's one basic I did with a pencil to have all the basics together, like starting with the one frame, for example, and then I go to the computer and build my own pencil, software-based pencil, which is based on scans of the real pencil. So I can have it in a computer, and I do it in a little software. It's called TV Paint from France. I think you all know it. Doing animation, and then it's done frame by frame. And some of the more complicated parts inside the chimney, I used a real model of the chimney. I built it. Like a stop motion model, and I put a little camera inside and did actually the maneuvering in the chimney. It's actually you cannot see it in the film, sadly, but it's really a stop motion part in there, and that was really cool to do. I think I will use it in the future and don't draw over it so much. But it's part of the film, yeah. But the rest is really a frame by frame classical approach, I would say.
Yeah. And how about you, Alexandra?
Well, I also used TV Paint, which is
we should put their logo in the bottom corner.
Well, the thing is, it's I used to animate on paper, not so many years ago, and I think it's a software that simulates really well what is animating by hand. So I did it, but to give the final visuals, I wasn't able to find a good brush or something that helps me to give that environment. So I print each frame, and I do have a team, a wonderful team, and this team helped me to make all these drawings by hand, and these drawings were made in graphite pencil and graphite powder. So I have like buckets of that powder, and I get my hands completely dirty, and I smudge everything on the backgrounds, in the clouds, in the characters itself, and after we photograph and we put in on the computer, and when we invert this powder, this graphite lines becomes a kind of a light, like it helped me to give some oniric environment, like people are daydreaming or something, and to make this kind of drawings, I did it like in the opposite. For example, if I want to draw an eye, I fill the white part with the charcoal, and then I invert, and then becomes normal. But I need to test each frame to see if I'm not mix everything. And actually, I did in one shot. I did the eye completely opposite, and seems that the character was completely possessed. But well, I realized on time to change. And, yeah, I think these are the main lines of the technique. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels the texture really comes across very well. It feels like you can feel like the roughness to it.
Yeah,
it's
because
very-
I cannot explain, because in the previous film that I did with a friend of mine, Laura. We co-directed. Actually, it was in Chicago as well, and it was in printmaking. The backgrounds were in the dry point technique, which is a technique of printmaking, and we managed to make a brush digitally for the most part of the characters. Just a small part was animated in dry point itself. But here I couldn't replicate that kind of dirtiness, that dirtiness, it's undigital. I don't know. Probably it's possible, but in my way of do the things, it's not so easy. Yeah.
And Renee, how about you? You mentioned it was sort of a departure for you to do a stop motion piece. I guess, how did you come to decide that stop motion was the form for this? And then can you talk about like the actual the process of grinding through that? I'm sure it took a long time.
Yeah. So, so I made this film in grad school at the National Film and Television School, which is known for its like stop motion films, and it had the facilities and to support that. So yeah, I really wanted to try it. And yeah, I thought because it would let me work, it would force me, I guess, to work with a bigger team, which turned out to be really fun and amazing, but I was really nervous about. But yeah, I really liked, so it's like maybe 70% stop motion and then 30% like hand-drawn. And I really liked the idea that, so everything inside the black hole is in stop motion, because I liked the idea that as she brought things into herself, into the black hole, they became solid and they became forever, versus the sort of more transient, ephemeral, like 2D world of the outside. So yeah, that's why I decided to do these two mediums. The 2D part was all, I actually did it on, this is my first film in a while doing it all on paper. And I forgot what the technique's called, oh dear. But it's like sort of, a lot of it is like, it's just on one piece of paper, but I would do a charcoal drawing, take a picture and then erase it, and then do the next one on top of it. So you have sort of the trail of the previous drawings. And that, again, related to like time and seeing, like trying to stop time and seeing, something like that. And then, as we go, as she becomes a black hole, everything becomes more solid and permanent. And so, I worked with a production designer called Richard Henley, and we built these sort of cave-like sets, like these twisty caves, which is what we imagined a solidified black hole to look like. And then, and then all the puppets were built. Yeah, I didn't realize how hard stop motion would be when we went into it. It turns out that gravity is the greatest enemy. Sets fall down, lights fall down, puppets fall down. That was never something I had to deal with when I was drawing. But yeah.
I'm curious what the scale of the puppets are. I know it varies from like film to film when we're talking about stop motion, but like how big were
they were about 15 centimeters was the main puppet, which I think is small for stop motion and delicate, and so and because so small, it would break so easily. So it like we probably got through about 20 of the main character. I'm just like recasting them. I have them actually. You could grab them. Yeah.
I'm curious for a question for everyone. How long did the process take? The like animation process? I know. I feel like I'm often told that like, oh, this 5-minute film took me 8 years to make. You just like, what's the time frame for these? Anyone can start. Friedrich, why don't you tell us how long it took?
Can I answer? I will answer. In my case, with the team, it was 1 year and a half, but actually starts quite before. I think it's usual because you make the project and then you need to wait for the funding, and after the funding you need to get the team and blah blah blah. So the project took me for the start to end 3-4 years, but to do it like 1 year and a half.
I guess it's a bit the same with me. The whole idea doing a film that takes place in this format was before the real topic was there. So we planned out to make a film, and then we changed the idea later as I did my research. I think the whole process took also some years, but most of this time we didn't do any work on the film. So it's just there, you have a basic idea, you wait for funding, as Alexandra said, and then suddenly there comes an idea, and you finish the whole preparation, and you have a little team. I mean, we have a small studio in Hamburg with some people, and they helped out to finish this one. And I think the work took some month in the end to finish it. So then music and sound also a couple of weeks, and I mean, this is interesting. The last part is always where everything goes so fast, and before that it's incredibly long. So I don't know what I prefer. I think after a time I get really nervous, and I think it's not good, and then I wish I had more time, but then actually it's also something interesting to have no time in the end and everything is waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Renee, how about you? How long did Black Hole take?
Because I was in film school, we had a tight deadline, so which I did miss, but probably like I think 1.5 years total.
Wow.
From beginning, it was a bad year. But yeah, I mean, it's good. I'm glad that it's finished. And probably production, like actual shooting, was probably 7-8 months. Yeah, I found my singularities.
Oh,
I've lost her head, but this gives her bodies.
Yeah. I love the artifacts that animators are sort of left with after the project. I was talking with another filmmaker last week or a couple of weeks ago, and they said they had like 200 giant canvases left over from a project. What are you supposed to do with those? I don't know. I want to. Oh, Frederick, go ahead.
No, I just with the artifacts, I can say that one layer we did in the end was done again with paper. So talking about the technical process, it started with paper, then the computer went in, and in the end we had paper again to do the coloring and all the artifacts coming. And so one of our animators in the team, Rebecca, in the end, she didn't want to have all this paper laying around, and then she brought me boxes of this paper where there's just like the color layer, which is interesting. So nobody knows what to do with this. So I don't know what other animators do with their paper archive, but I mean,
Make like card visits, like your business card.
Yeah.
Drawings and it's a film.
or you make an exhibition with like thousands of
Yeah, you will cover like a building.
wallpaper.
You can save them for like special edition Blu-ray releases of the films. You can include
right.
the chimney or the papers with the top for the top buyers.
If they're still Blu-ray, then right?
Yeah, exactly. The digital release, it's a file, and then you mail them the canvas.
Maybe the soundtrack on the vinyl or something.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good idea.
I want to ask about, since you all said you worked with teams, and Renee, you mentioned you typically make films sort of just by yourself. Can you talk about like that collaborative process? Because I'm always curious about animation, especially these kinds of animations that are like maybe non-narrative or non-traditional, and have these images that kind of flow into one another. Can you talk about communicating those ideas so that everyone is on the same page and that they like actually know and understand what you're trying to achieve? Alexandra, why don't you start?
Okay, so I have a team, and a really special team. Actually, we formed like a couple of years ago a cooperative. So actually, we are a group of directors that try to work in each other's work. So we all make films, and we all are always changing the positions. So I think we sharp our way of dialogue through the years. So it's really natural to communicate with these people. But the thing is, for example, in live action, sometimes the script is really important to communicate with the team. I think at least my way of doing this, because as I said, we are several directors and other directors have other points of view, but I use the storyboard as the main way of communication, and I try to draw a lot, and some things are not easy to communicate, but we move a lot to try to explain the movements. I think for me it's harder to talk about music rather than drawings, because with drawings I can exemplify, and I think the people that I work with are really skilled to understand this way of communicate. But with the sound, it's really hard for me to give examples and to say, this kind of music or this instrument make me feel this thing in a more precise way. But I think if we are a bit open, the team can bring a lot to us that we are not expecting at the beginning. But we need to be open, because if we have something really specific in mind, it's hard to let the things come in. But we still need to know what we want, to don't get lost, because there is a lot of new impulses every day from the team as well. So I think there is a balance that we need to find according with what you are open to let get into the film and what you are not. And so in this way, I feel that the team is really important. But I also feel that there is some projects that it's better to do it. It's not better to do it. It's something more isolated. If it's something really, really experimental that you want to try, that you don't have a goal, what is the finish of the film, and if it's something like that, I think it can be really hard for the team if you try to do it with a team and you don't know anything, but you want to don't know anything. So I think each project might define the type of team that you have, or that it can be good. Yeah.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Shall I? Oh, Renee, please.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I like you said, like I really like to sort of explore and discover things as I'm like making the film, especially when I'm animating or actually have the puppet or the drawing in front of me. Is I think when I really figure out stuff. So I have a hard time with storyboards and animatics. And so my team was very patient with me, which I really appreciated. And but it, yeah, I mean, I think like after, you know, months of working together, we just sort of started to get on the same wavelength and started to understand each other. And yeah, and it ended up, it was really fun. And I think I was very lucky to find people that I really loved working with and will continue on the next one. Yeah, which is going to be a live action / a little bit of animation hybrid. But yeah, which is something totally new to me, but because I'm sort of going to be working with many of the same people, I think I'll have that nice like safety net.
And Friedrich, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's some true stories in there I can relate to what you guys said. It's for me, usually it's I don't think about a team so much in the beginning, so I just I guess I wrote the story down and I pitched it a little bit to my producer Fabian, and he was like saying, okay, he's usually giving a lot of ideas into that too, so a lot of creative ideas. And we both of us, we founded this little studio, so we have some people there, animators working on other projects. And then he was like saying, okay, you can do this, but don't do everything yourself, please. Because usually I just start, and then I guess it's like what you said, Alexandra, I try to figure out a way of not knowing everything in the beginning and figuring it out. And so Fabian, I think he usually tries to avoid that and make a good plan. So also we do it a lot in other projects, like having a good plan, of course. And for my films, I try also to get a little bit around it for reasons I don't can explain, but to find the story, I guess, while doing it. But that takes a lot of time. So I think it was good to not do it. And so what we did in the end was Alba came and she did a storyboard, and then she did an animatic based on what I've written there. And from that, I could say, okay, let's do the characters. And I always wanted to try a film where the characters are done by different people and not one person designing them. So the birds came from Alba, and the kid came from Rebecca, and they had total freedom, I think, especially for the kid. And I was like waiting for the animation, and there were parts I didn't even want to change anything, and I tried to combine it in this film. So I think that's the reason why some of the stuff looks very, very different from the other. I think when you look the designs, and I kind of like this popping up in the process, and so I kept it, and then we kind of mixed it together while creating the layout. And yeah, that was really cool. So we had like 3 people working, and then the sound came later. And the music, and also there I think I run a little bit out of time there, and so I played a lot of the music myself, and and Alex, who did the sound, he tried to rescue that, I think, as good as he could, and the mixing, and it was like a strange process, but we had like basically in the end we had 2 characters done by 2 different people. I did like the story and the parts of the animation also, but this kind of stop motion chimney I used as environment, and so it was a very, very new thing in this case, for me. So with a team that usually works like in a very normal pipeline, I would say. Animation pipeline, so just classic approach, and then I kind of mix it up a bit.
We lost someone.
We're alone.
Oh no, Sam is gone.
Are you still live? Yes, we're still on.
So
Okay. He will be back.
Can we see the cat again?
Oh yeah, the cat.
We see what?
Can we
What
see
cat?
your cat again?
Ah, the cats.
Sorry, my internet died completely. Luckily, that hasn't happened so far this festival. So we made it, I made it. I don't know, until Thursday. That's pretty good. I'm sorry about that. We are running out of time though, so I want to ask. My
Okay.
cat
He's here.
nowhere to be found. I've got a cat. Can I ask everyone what you're working on next? If you're working on a project now.
So I can answer. Well, as I said, I work in this specific way that we are always rotate in our job. So I'm doing some painting for Laura Gonçalves' film, which was the director that directed the previous film with me. We co-directed before, but now we are making films alone, but we are still part of the teams. And actually, we will have a new project, a documentary again, as the first one, that we will direct after she finishes that film, the film that she's doing now. So probably in 1 year we will start. Until then, I will work in other directors' films. Yeah, and that's it.
Right.
I'm doing both a short and developing a feature film, and they are both like based on a CG and stop motion mix, I would call it. So something very different to this film, I would say. Yeah.
And Renee, what about you? Oh, you mentioned live action, right?
Yeah, so it's live action with a bit of animation in it, and it's a horror film about an Asian American violinist growing up in Texas.
Is that a short or a feature?
It's a short with the idea that like hopefully we'll also develop it into a feature.
Great. Perfect. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us here and for sharing your films with the festival, addressing the audience now. You can see these films in the Shorts 2 program, all three, which is really an excellent program. These films are beautiful, but there are also some other works included in that program as well that are really great. So thanks everyone for being here and sharing your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.